So does this sound familiar? I have debt, but also want to save for my future. I'm not sure where my money goes at the end of the month. I'm nearing retirement and I'm not sure if there's anything more I can do to prepare. Or I make great income, but I feel like I should get more out of it. If you're hoping to change your financial situation, continue watching and listening as Ryan and I will discuss the following: the flaws of budgeting, smarter spending strategies, debt reduction and tips, and finding money for your goals. So stay tuned. Ryan, so today we're going to talk about why budgeting doesn't work. And sometimes this tends to be a little bit controversial of a topic. I know we've discussed that in the past. So I know it's one of your favorite topics as well.
Budgets, yes. Budget, no.
And we're not saying that you shouldn't budget, but I think everyone kind of uses budgeting for everything. And
Yeah.
there's definitely more appropriate times when you would use a budget and when you wouldn't. So let's start going through some numbers and talk about why budgeting doesn't work. So some of these numbers here, from what you can see, Ryan, I think you've seen some recent numbers. These are based on 2019.
Yeah.
The first thing I think we can say is with budgeting, really what it does is it provides awareness, but really no action.
Yeah.
Right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest thing that we do talk about is budgeting, or this doesn't have to be scary. It's really about making you more aware of where your spending is going. And as we'll discuss, walking through and understanding where your money's going is just as important or more important than anything on the table. And as you said, most Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. And the more recent number that I saw, I think, was 64%. And that was based on a 2021 number versus 2019.
Now, when you're saying 64%, because we have to be mindful of the fact that there are people who are watching this and can see the screen, but
Yeah.
also people that are listening and can't see the screen. So can you explain what the difference of the 64% and 60% is in regards to?
Yeah. So when it comes to 60% of Canadians are capable of creating a basic budget,
Right.
but nearly 53% of those Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. So that's what I was saying with the number is people living paycheck to paycheck is much higher than what we're seeing now. Obviously, we've had some things happen in the markets more recently over the last couple of years. Obviously, we went through a thing we will no longer talk about that happened a few years ago that really put a strain on people's savings and investing.
Yeah.
Hence why I think we're $200 away from bankruptcy for some Canadians is a figure that often comes up through commercials and advertising that I've seen more recently. So,
Right.
and then, as we talk about owing, out of the G7, the big countries of the world, we have the highest debt of any of those countries,
Really.
which is a crazy number to think about, and also something to be thoughtful and mindful of as we go through this, and asking the people listening is, where do you see yourself, and have you taken a step back to kind of reflect on where you currently stand, and what steps can we potentially help you in moving forward away from that worrisome mindset of am I living paycheck to paycheck? Do I know where my money is going? And that, this number that we're showing right now is that Canadians owe $1.78 for every dollar, and that number is higher if you are holding a mortgage too. That's something else to consider.
Okay. So really, what our exercise is today is to show individuals by, this presentation, for those of you who are not watching, you're listening, you can reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to send you the actual presentation itself, or you can go to our YouTube channel and watch it. But really, what our goal is here is to help people become aware of where they're at. I think also understand that they're not alone.
Yeah.
They're not the only ones dealing with a lot of these issues. When we're looking at, now 64% of Canadians living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm afraid that number is probably going to go up, just because of, the increases in taxes that we're kind of dealing with, where the interest rates are. People are being forced to sell their homes now. We're starting to see that happen.
Yeah.
I think that number is going to be much higher. So we're here to show why there is hope, potentially, by changing the approach. So let's talk about budgeting. What comes to mind when you hear that word, Ryan?
I think for a lot of people, it's, oh man, I have to budget. And, perhaps more recently, it's about trying to set more shorter term goals. And I always thought of it as this ongoing thing that we're always budgeting. You're sitting down with your family around the table and doing a quarterly or yearly review and budgeting out a year. But something that I've taken away and learned more recently is budgeting is more of a shorter term, setting shorter term goals for something smaller than looking at the year as a whole. So
Yeah, because I think at one point in time before kind of coming across behavioral cash flow planning, you used to get giddy when you talked about budgeting, right?
absolutely. It's,
But
but
go ahead.
no, it's different terms, right? And understanding how you can find money within
Yeah.
budgeting. Again, having
Right.
run companies and organizations, everything, the word is budget. Look at your budget
Yeah.
and where your expenses are and whatnot. So there's
Yeah.
always this umbrella over encompassing word that
Yeah.
that pains people to hear, because often budgeted means cutting, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
year-end budget, time to cut, or time to
Yeah.
use up my expenses before they cut it for next year. So,
All right. Well, let's talk about what most people tend to hear, and I think these apply to dieting as well, and maybe even going through some kind of physical program, exercise program. But a lot of people here, first of all, and I think this is a big one, is restrictive, right?
Yeah.
Just to your point, it's we're going to be cutting now,
yeah,
and no one really likes that. Controlling, right? Because a lot of people set those budgets and you have to try to stay within that budget, and that's very controlling. Some people are afraid of it, right? They hear fear, pain, right? Again, the pain I think is coming from the restriction that they're going to have to deal with. Letting go. I think that's kind of letting go of your free spending and having to do things in a very controlled manner. Giving up.
yeah.
I don't know really from a giving up point of view. Maybe they're giving up on their hopes and dreams as a result. I'm not sure.
Burn it all down, just spend it all.
Yeah. This one is, I think, does make sense for sure. Sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Right? It's a sacrifice that everyone has to make. What I can't have. So it's not about what they can have, but what they can't have. And why bother working hard if we can't really enjoy the money because we're kind of trying to follow this budget? So
Yeah.
that's what a lot of people hear. So, again, you've been a big proponent of budgets in the past. What we've learned is, they do work in certain situations.
Yeah.
So maybe you can kind of go through some of these examples.
Yeah, where budgets do work, and obviously it doesn't always have to be a bad word, but for more short term, as I was saying, if somebody wants to save for a vacation, that's one of the biggest ones. And, you set aside a certain amount of money and you save up for that, and you set a budget of terms that you're going to spend. Gifts, and especially as we come up upon holiday season and Black Fridays and stuff, it's really important that people start setting budgets for what they're willing to spend during the holiday season. Different tasks, or you want to upgrade your house, update the kitchen or the bathroom, put in a hot tub or a nice sauna in the backyard, renovations. So those are things where budgets really do work, of setting aside time setting aside some money and setting yourself a goal to be able to reach that instead of putting yourself in perhaps more debt. So,
Yeah. So basically, anything that has a beginning and an end or a specific time frame,
yeah,
right? And I think that's why where they fail when people are using it in terms of trying to manage their total finances, the beginning is today and the end might be 30 years from now. That's a long time and a lot
yeah,
of changes, right? So definitely, if you're looking to put together a budget, renovations, so projects like that, renovations a good one. Any tasks that you might have, events, gifts, vacations, and just as a reminder, anything that has a beginning and an end, right?
hmm,
So the flaws of budgeting. The first one really is a loss of ability to prioritize, right? You have X amount of funds that are coming in, and you're setting X amount, for each category, and there's many categories. It's difficult to prioritize because what do you prioritize nowadays? Gas to get to work,
hmm,
or food to put on the table, or the heating bill, or the mortgage or rent payment? Like, it's difficult to prioritize those.
yeah,
What's more important? You need them all. So that's very difficult.
yeah,
Um, Apps. And I'm a techie guy and I love apps and technology, but really, budget apps don't really hold you accountable for anything. Again, it's more of an awareness is
hmm,
what they provide. Electronic payments. This is a big one, right? They make it too easy and convenient to spend. It's just tap, 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 tap.
yeah,
One of the things we've talked about is, um, trying to keep a mental math of what
yeah,
you've spent,
yeah,
and people rarely get that right.
yeah,
It's not marketing proof. So budgets basically are, here's what your budget is, but we get bombarded with marketing and advertising. And
hmm,
once upon a time, the marketing and advertising just came from TV commercials and maybe a newspaper and a magazine.
yeah,
And then they started to creep into the movie theater. I hated when that started to happen,
mm,
right? And now it's everywhere. It's on our phones.
yeah,
So they definitely don't protect us from marketing.
yeah,
And education really can't fix any of the underlying issues. Like, if you have
absolutely,
spending issues, if you have behavior issues, doesn't matter how you're educated in terms of spending your money, budgeting, it's not going to fix your problem.
yeah,
And this is one that, I've come up with a lot with clients that I've worked with, where I think I said the word with more than three times. But anyways, you know, they're coming to me asking for advice on their cash flow. And one of the questions I ask them is this a behavior problem?
mm,
Like, do you see yourself repeating this again? And have you repeated this in the past? Like, how many times have you gotten yourself in this type of financial situation where, your debt has gone up and your revolving debt and so on and so forth? And people, when they really think about it, they can see that it's more of a pattern.
yeah,
So we need to try to help them change their behavior. Um, and budgeting really can't keep up with the pace of life. That's really another important one too. Again, the pace of life. If we talk about some of the expenses and the volatility behind some of the expenses like gas and groceries, you have to eat. You have to put fuel in your vehicle to get to work.
hmm.
We can't control a lot of those things. So budgeting doesn't really help in those situations. Did you want to
And
add anything here?
well, I'd say two things. One, for the pace of life, too, is we're so uh, enthralled in the social media world that we're trying to keep up not with only our pace of life but other people's pace of life.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
uh, you know, putting yourself on maybe a 30-day diet of no social media may help, but going back to the education piece, uh, that's really the importance of the cash flow solutions too. Is there's an educational piece that can help create a better behavior and better habits for you and your family, things that you can pass on generationally and to friends and family. And that's one of the key takeaways for me in going through this process is how much more education is there and available, and how we as coaches, advisors, can support you in helping you create those behaviors and maintaining it. That way, you don't get carried away. And stay on track and stay on your budget or understand your cash flow. So
Yeah, we're not dealing with the symptoms. We're
yeah,
dealing with the actual root problem.
yeah,
That's the difference. Where I think budgets deal with the symptoms
yeah.
and it's a short term fix. We want to deal with the root cause of the problem. So, good points. Now, we didn't go through this in the presentation. There was an example of the Johnson family who they were looking at keeping a mental math of their spending. So again, if you're looking to see that example, let us know. We'd be more than happy to send you the link. The bottom line is it's very difficult to keep an ongoing mental math of your expenses, especially if you're a family who are using one account and you're also have different expenses you're drawing from that account.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult to track. So we want to try to avoid the mental math, and we want to be able to have something that is actual trackable.
Yeah. And
So,
we know our we know our fixed expenses, right? When we ask people when they do the mental math, you know, I'm going to say right now, 100% of the clients right away know what their fixed expenses are. But if we were to go through some of their statements and understand what the variable expenses are of eating out and groceries, things like that, entertainment, it gets a little fuzzy as to what's being spent on the day to day, and that's where we often get carried away at the dollar store. So,
see, I've never been to I don't go to the dollar store, so I don't know what the fascination is with the dollar store. But hey, we all have our crutches, right?
yeah, should be the $100
Well,
store.
yeah. So the point I guess here too is with the variable expenses, when you're looking at budgeting as an example, we're using gasoline. People try to incorporate gasoline in their budget and say, well, we're only spending X amount per week. The problem with that is the pricing is variable. Although I just came back from Alberta, and the one thing I noticed there, I was there for a week in Alberta, and the price of gas definitely wasn't that much lower than Ontario. Like we're a lot closer than they used to be, but the price was actually quite constant for the whole week.
Yeah,
Like I think where we were it was about $1.49.7 for 7 days straight.
yeah.
Right, we're here in Ontario.
It's
It's
like
almost like
watching
the stock market.
Stock market, exactly.
Yeah. So if we're dealing with people in Ontario, in Southern Ontario, who are looking at gasoline, and they're trying to budget gasoline, and it acts almost like the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
You can budget $100 a week for gasoline, and if you were used to paying $1.30 for it, maybe you can get by. But when it went up to $2 a liter or close to it last year, it's not going to work. You're just not going to have enough gas by the end of the week if you're only budgeting $100 or whatever the amount is. And then it's like you can't go to work, you can't go out.
Mm.
So, trying to budget an example like gasoline, it's a little bit too much effort and really very little impact because you have no choice. You
Yeah.
have to pay what you have to pay, right?
Yeah. Unless you take the 2-foot express or the bicyclette.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, not everyone can. I mean, I heard, I think his name was Tom or Tim Houston, who was the premier of Nova Scotia yesterday, and they were talking about the carbon tax.
Mhm.
And, he made a good point. He's like, listen, in rural Nova Scotia, people have to drive. You can't ask a family to throw their hockey bag in the back of a bicycle to go cycle to the local arena in the middle of winter when the local arena might be a 30-minute drive,
yeah.
So you just can't do that. So that's the problem. Now, when you're in big cities, different story,
Yeah.
right? But when you're not, it's really not an option.
Mhm.
So let's talk about wants and needs. So again, needs are in that variable side, right? And wants, if we look on the fixed expenses, we want coffee, eating out, and daily expenses. So I think I got that a little bit wrong. But we need groceries. We need to pay for rent. We need gasoline. And the problem with, groceries is another example. If you're budgeting $100 a week for groceries and everything has gone up 10%, then whatever you were buying before for $100 is now going to cost you $110.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to do with less food, maybe less quality food. And we're starting to see that right now as well, right? So it's difficult. It's just too much risk of overspending when it comes to groceries. And I think the other point too that I shared with you, Ryan, the other day was Carol doesn't really like when I go grocery shopping with her because, she does most of the grocery shopping. When I go,
Yeah.
I start grabbing stuff and throwing it in the cart.
Yeah.
And she'll ask, like, do you know how much that costs? I'm like, no, that's what I want. I haven't had those cookies in years or whatever. And,
Yeah.
And then, every single time we walk out of the grocery and we see what the price was, like, I'm not as shocked because I don't do it, but she is. She's like, normally I spend X amount, and I have more than what we have today. So groceries is a problem. Just don't go to the grocery store hungry.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely try to plan out my shopping beforehand, and I've noticed. And just over a year ago, I know I was going in and out $67, and just 2 days ago, and it was $107. So that's the difference. And I buy relatively the same things for the most part, as far as trying to plan out meals and stuff. But that's a significant increase. And I remember looking at the baskets, thinking to myself, "What did I just buy?" So,
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing happens at the beer store too with us. But that's for another episode. So here's the problem with budgeting. It's overwhelming to the brain.
yeah,
Too many categories, just way too many to track, right? So the other thing too is it's really not compatible with, again, electronic spending, right? Everything's tap, 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 or credit, and even not even tap anymore. Like now you can, my daughter went to Trent and we looked to pay for parking. Well, it's, you just scan the QR code and it pops up on your phone and, you press a button and it's charged to your credit card or your Apple wallet, right? So very, very difficult and overwhelming. It's high effort, and I think where I can definitely say that this is true is when we've tried to ask and gather data from our clients. It was very easy to collect things like, well, what assets do you have? They're able to bring that information fairly easily, but when it came down to what's all your spending, what are the different categories, and here's a list of categories, that was like pulling teeth at times because it's not fun. It's a lot of effort. No one really wants to spend an afternoon or however long or a weekend trying to pull all that data. Anything else you want to add to this?
it is a pain, but the more you do it, the more often you make it a habit of doing it. I say 4 times a year. The easier it gets, and it makes it much easier when sitting and having a beer while doing it. So, and just collecting the information again, it comes down to awareness of it. And we've used this analogy before about having a coach. Hockey players have numerous, athletes in general have numerous coaches for different areas, and this is just another area that you yourself can have a coach for us to help support you in keeping you accountable through each of these things and making sure that there aren't too many categories and that you're not constantly tapping your card, but you're taking that moment to see, does this help me reach my goal?
Yep.
Yes or no, right? So
For sure. And that kind of leads to what we're talking about here, right? We try to categorize things to make it easier. So really we have kind of like 2 buckets that we work with as opposed to, 50 different categories, 30 different categories. We have the low emotional risk, that's your spendable. So those are things like your mortgage payment and, your heating bill and they're fixed, they're non-emotional. You can, ask the question. Yeah, that's exactly it. They're boring.
yeah,
The emotional side, which is the spendable, this is where people, like you said, get in trouble.
yeah,
Are things like groceries, eating out, and daily expenses, right? Because I noticed your Starbucks coffee cup there,
yeah.
So that's an area where people can kind of get out of control themselves, or Tim Hortons, right? Wherever you want to go, wherever your choice of beverage is. But yeah, we try to simplify the category. We basically have 2 categories of what we try to work with, right? And this one is true. No one really wants to be put on a budget. That's why 90% of the time they fail,
Yeah,
right? Again, I think people are well-intentioned.
yeah,
They feel good the first few months about, collecting the toonie and the loony in the jars, right? And they see how that fills up to a certain point.
Yeah.
But then they feel a level of restriction, um, and all of a sudden they feel deprived,
Yeah.
and they go nuts, and they'll like dieting. And I've done it in the past. I'll eat a large pizza all of a sudden and fall off the wagon, so to speak.
It's funny. I read this quote when we were going through it, and my brain actually said, "No one wants to be put on a diet," and they coincide. Budget, diet, they both can create pain for people.
Yeah.
But again, if we make them a little bit more shorter term, they're digestible. We're able to conquer the small wins, and those small wins create better habits and better behaviors over the longer term, right? So, yeah.
So that's what you're basically speaking to now. Is in terms of what we try to do, is let's set a goal. A shorter term goal, anywhere from 6 to 18 months. It can't be about paying off debt. It can't be about paying down your credit card or paying off your student loan. It has to be something that makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be vacation. Maybe you haven't gone on vacation for a while, right? Or I don't know. I just got back into playing my guitar after about 15 years, and I'm thinking I'd like to upgrade my guitar, right? So that'll make me happy. You're looking for a Triumph motorcycle, so maybe that's something that you could set out as a goal over the next 6 to 18 months, and that'll make you happy. It might make some other people in your life unhappy, but it'll make you happy. It's all that matters, right? So really, that's what we want to do. We want to start off with the behavioral cash flow plan.
Yeah,
is let's pick something that's really, it's kind of like a weight goal, right? But the problem, and again, I speak from experience because this is something that I've dealt with after I was not able to play sports anymore. I'd start off with, well, I want to lose, call it 50 pounds. And I want to do that 50 pounds in the next 12 months. Mm-hmm. That was a big elephant to start to chew. Like it was very difficult. But when I started to break it down to, what, I want a half a pound a week. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that kind of made it a little bit easier, right? Or maybe I just want to start off with 10% of my body weight. I just want to lose 10% of my body weight.
Yeah.
Right. So it just, the little chunks and on a shorter time horizon has made it easier over the years, right? Yeah. Similar to behavioral cash flow planning. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to this?
Best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time, right? So, and those small little micro things, that half percentage, that 10% starts rolling and adding up to something much bigger, right? So half a pound a week over 52 weeks, that's 52 pounds. So nothing wrong with losing 52 pounds in a year, right? So the reverse is the same when it comes to investing and budgeting and saving. So
yeah, you're right. Now, this is a really good point. Saving doesn't change spending habits, right? You can save money, but it doesn't mean that you're going to stop spending. If anything, I mean, I've seen people who have saved money and then they dip into their savings to spend on something.
Yeah.
Right. So they're really kind of in this cycle, and they're just spinning their wheels. Right. Yeah. So some of the things that we want to do is we want to create systems that work with your psychology and not against it. And that's why we actually have the Money Mindset ebook and the Money Mindset questionnaire, because it'll help determine what your money mindset is, which will then in turn will help us determine what's the best strategy to take based on your money mindset. And I've gone through this exercise with people, and some of them would say, well, that's not me in the money mindset. It's not meant to be like 100% right. I would say 80% of what's in there is typically what your habits are based on the outcome, based on the results. So there's, we want to automate some credit and debt systems. One of the things is if you are a heavy credit card user and you kind of spend based on, you see something, you buy it. I'm guilty of that myself personally. Leave the credit card at home. I think I've shared this with you too, Ryan, was
Yeah.
At times when I've gone to the mall or Canadian Tire, that's my dollar store, um, I might just lock my wallet with my credit cards in the car
Yeah.
and go into the mall, because if I have the wallet with me, I'll see something that I wasn't planning on buying. I'll like it, and then put the money on the charge it on the credit card.
Yeah.
But if I have it in the car, or if it's at home, but in the car, I'm just too lazy to walk to the car to get my wallet to then go all the way back to the mall and buy whatever. So usually I'll just kind of walk away,
Yeah.
right? So that's a strategy. Automate a bill payment to your credit card. That's another good one too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you have bill payments and they allow for payment on a credit card, automate it.
Yeah.
But then you want to automate pay in full from your bank account, right? So you want to be able to automate the payment from your credit or from your bank account to that credit card.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing you want to look at. Um, I'm not really good at this. I don't know, Ryan, if you are, but encourage statement checking,
Yeah.
right? Check your statements. And that's something that I'm starting to get better at. I still have a lot of work ahead of me.
Yep.
But that's one to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And here's another one too: is check your credit once a year at minimum. And there are programs out there that offer a free credit service. Some of the banks now are starting to offer it,
Yeah.
right? But some of the third-party companies, I personally use Credit Karma. It's free to the consumer. Just be forewarned that how they make their money is by marketing and advertising offers. So just be mindful of that. But I check my credit on a more frequent basis, and it doesn't impact your credit score when you use these free services.
And this is something that's coming up a lot more recently with clients, I find, is just being more educated about understanding their credit, especially with a lot of the younger clients that I'm working with, is understanding what the credit score is, how that affects future loans,
Yeah,
other credits you're going to have when you want to get a mortgage. It can have a huge impact, and how us as parents can help our kids understand what that credit score is and build good credit leading up
yeah.
to from now until they're 18 and beyond.
Mm,
So the website, Canadian website, government website, has lots of great information of understanding that, also of what is credit score, and understand how to effectively change your credit and make it a good score. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so my daughter, and I know I've shared this story in past episodes. She was offered a credit card as a university student. So I've been working with her in terms of, use it. It's a great tool if you use it responsibly.
Mhm.
Because when I was her age and I was given a credit card, no one taught me how to use it, and I got myself in trouble.
Yeah.
So I am teaching her. One of the things that happened earlier this year, and this might, people will have different opinions on this, but she was offered a full time summer job, cash under the table. She thought it was a great idea. I said no. She asked why, and I said because you're not going to have a record of anything of employment. Like at some point, you're going to have to apply for credit. They're
Yeah.
going to want to verify income. You can't verify income that's not recorded.
Yeah.
So, when I explained that to her, she understood it.
Mhm.
But I know other people kind of thought I was crazy, because it's like, hey, no taxes, it's under the table. But I want her to build her credit moving forward, and these are the steps that she needs to take to be able to do that. Because at some point she's gonna need to buy, real estate or get her own vehicle. Like there's just so many things. Even if she wants to rent a place, they're going to be looking at your credit history.
Yeah.
So just a point to throw out there.
Dating scores
Uh,
also.
well, I haven't dated in over 21 years, so I wouldn't know. Money is not a math problem. Isn't that interesting?
Mm.
So it's not a math problem. It's just we have to know how to use money properly.
Yeah.
So here, for those of you who are listening, not watching, we're showing the typical cash flow system. So, Ryan, do you want to explain this?
Yeah. So typical cash flow is that we have our income coming into a singular bank, and from there we pay our bills, we pay our debt, we put away our savings, and then whatever other spending that's going on, and it flows too easily for a lot of people, and it makes it harder for people to track how they're spending. So again, we want to make sure that we're creating a system that is allowing you to be accountable to yourself when creating flow of your own cash, especially when it comes to your income coming in. So, you know, I guess the next slide really talks about, how we can create a system within somebody's cash flow that is
And the next slide is not even loading what that system is. So let's talk about the system. So basically, and that's weird that it's not loading. But anyways, really what you want to do is your spendable expenses. So you still want to have your income going into your main operating bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of your fixed expenses would still flow out of that main operating bank account. Some weird things going on right now. Oh, here we go. It finally loaded. So that's what you want. You want your committed expenses, your debt payments, and a lot of your savings and things of that nature to still come out of your main cash flow operating account. Then you want to set up a separate bank account, which is your spendable cash flow account. And you want to attach it to your main operating account. So you could go to your current financial institution and just set up another account as a spendable account. You would identify it as such. Or we can help you open up an account as well. We have access to different banks as well. And through that spendable cash account, you really just want to use your designated spendable expenses. You want to run it through that account. So it's almost the equivalent of once upon a time when we would, take $100 of cash and put it in our pocket. Yeah. And that's what we would spend all week on gas and cigarettes and going out and whatever else. The spendable account is kind of like the equivalent. And we even encourage in the first month, you might just want to use cash. Mm-hmm. Don't use a debit card. So you would take, whatever, let's say the spendable weekly amount is, call it $500. Each week you can automate it, take the money from your committed account to your spendable account, and you can take up the $500 each week and buy your groceries with it, buy your gas with it, buy whatever. And then after the first 30 days, you can convert that to using your debit card from that one account. Mm-hmm. And this helps you control. It's almost like an umbrella limit, right? So it's almost like, here's your umbrella limit for the week on your spendables, on your variables, and try to stay within that spendable amount. And that can be adjusted. We do have a range that we recommend. We have the safe range, but sometimes it's just not enough. We need to kind of increase that slightly. Yeah. So we can do that. We have that flexibility. Or sometimes we need to kind of, tighten it up a little bit more to try to achieve some other goals.
And part of that is creating that behavior and habit for yourself, right? Just like the old ways of putting money in envelopes and whatever's left at the end of the month, you have a choice of either putting it back into your next week's spending or putting it away for your own saving, investing, emergency fund. So
yeah, for sure. So if we can show you what is safe to spend, then and only then will you feel safe to save. Mm-hmm. That make sense?
Made sense to me. Do you want to say it again?
No, it's recorded. People can rewind. So right now we're looking at basically reorganizing expenses into manageable categories. So we've talked about this already. On the left, we want the committed expenses, no emotional risk. It's your bills, it's your insurance, it's your investments, your money you're putting into your savings accounts, your mortgage, whatever else. On the right-hand side, we want to look at your spendable expenses. That's your groceries, your eating out, your daily expenses. And those are a little bit more emotional in nature. Yeah. So that's how we want to break things down. So with a behavioral cash flow plan, it helps you find the money to fund some of those dreams. Mm-hmm. And again, we go back to starting off with picking a goal of something that'll make you happy. Let's make it a short-term goal. it's a little win. It's just like losing the first 5 pounds, right? When you lose the first 5 pounds, then it's like, hey, I can keep doing this. That felt good. It wasn't so hard. Now I want to do the next five and the next five,
Mm-hmm.
right? We can show you how to save anywhere from $100 to $1,000 per month in inefficient interest.
Mm-hmm.
And how we do that is sometimes we look at unifying debt. People will have multiple credit cards, multiple lines of credits, different interest rates. We'll put together a unification plan, unification of debt plan, to really see if we unify all your debt, here's what your potential interest costs will be over a set period of time. Here's how much we've opened up as well from a cash flow point of view. And it's not always going to work, but it is an option.
Mm-hmm.
It'll help you stop some of the money leaks so that you have money for the things that do matter. And a plan also tells you what to do, not just what to buy, right?
No.
Anything else you want to add to that?
Well, when it comes to money leaks, especially, I think money leaks is a funny way of saying that your money's just floating down the river without you ever touching it. And again, going back to $100 to $1,000 per month, having gone through some of the program, and even back when I used to just simply call it budgeting, or going through, is you're easily finding well over $100, if not $1,000 a month, and add that by 12 months, right? So, and the impact that can have on how quickly you get to that vacation, or that I buy my motorcycle.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes we don't find anything. Sometimes it's you're in such a bad spot, you're going to have to make some very difficult decisions.
Yep.
And we have those as well, right?
Yep.
But at the very least is being, people are aware that they're not in a good spot. Some people believe they're not in a good spot, and then we present a plan and they realize it's not so bad.
Yeah.
Some people are in a bad spot, and then we walk them through the plan and they realize it's actually a lot worse than they thought it was.
Yeah.
And we help try to stop the bleeding by making some very difficult decisions and turning things around.
What I love that we've just talked about is most podcasts would say it's all sun and roses and everything will be okay. But the reality of it is that sometimes we can help, and there needs to be a major shift in your mindset and your behaviors.
Yeah.
But that being said, we're not just going to leave you high and dry. We're here to help people go through the process and help you be accountable and get you back on track to where you feel most comfortable. And by not talking about it, you're only delaying the problem. You're deferring, just like taxes, you're deferring the problem for later, or potentially leaving the problem for the next generation, which can be just as bad, of leaving generation over generation just full of like bad habits and bad behaviors that just continues over time. So,
or someone is making some of those hard decisions for you, i.e. bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Right. And you really don't want to get to that point.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to have control over your situation.
Yeah.
So let's help you become aware of where you're at. Mm-hmm. And again, if there's a way to help, we will help. If it's just a behavioral shift, wonderful. And if it's something bigger than that, then let's put a plan in action, before, again, someone else makes a decision for you.
Yep.
All righty. So we talked about this. Don't ignore your credit score. Be aware of what your credit score is. So you can see here, basically anywhere from 720 to 850 is excellent. That's where you're going to get the best rates in the future if you decide to qualify for credit. This is where, if you're looking to rent and you're up against 10 other people and they have a poor credit score, this might be the tipping point for you, mm-hmm. right, in getting that place for lease or for rent. So just be aware of what your credit score is. And again, it's very simple. There are now apps and websites that you can log into and sign up for, and they will provide you with a report. And also, what it helps you from is identity theft
Yeah.
too, because I know that in the past, whenever I've applied for credit for something, I would get a notification within a week or two saying, "Hey, there was just a credit hit or credit check on your credit history. Was
Yeah.
that you?"
Yeah.
And I would look and say, "Oh yeah, that was me. I applied for whatever."
Yeah.
But if it was somebody else who tried in my name, then I'd be able to act on that situation. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And people don't realize how quickly you can go and essentially fight for your credit score, because there may be something that was misrepresented on it or identity theft.
Yeah.
And by providing proof can help move that credit score. I've had 2 or 3 clients and friends that it's happened to where, you know, you have an outstanding credit card that you haven't used in 15 or 20 years that, the bank or whoever is misclosed and it's remained open, and it affects your credit score because of however many cards you have out and how often you use them.
Actually, that part. Sorry, Ryan, that part is incorrect. So if you actually have a credit card with a zero balance and it's still active after 20 years,
Yeah.
that actually helps your credit score because it's history, right?
Yeah, that is correct. Yes, the history it helps, but if certain credit cards aren't closed out correctly, though, and you're not actively, because I know it's good to have an active credit card, and just simply doing one transaction on it per year,
Yeah,
keeping it active helps your credit score.
yeah,
But I've had the situation where a certain bank didn't close it, and surprisingly, I actually had a negative balance of like 82 cents on it. It affected my credit score. I
yeah,
got it replaced and fixed to reflect what actually was happening, and my credit score went up pretty good, significant amount of points. So
yeah,
again, it's always about awareness and making sure you understand what it is that your score is, and
yeah.
who is checking in on your credit, because you never know. Mail goes out and somebody else grabs a new credit card that you didn't realize was assigned to you, right? So
Yeah, yeah, for
yeah,
sure. Alrighty, so we talked about this a little bit. Debt diversification will hurt, right? So look at restructuring your debt, unifying your debt. Try to have it all under, one credit card or line of credit if possible.
Mhm.
What it'll do is, again, it will help with your cash flow because the more credit cards and lines of credits that you carry a balance, it means there's a bunch of minimum payments you have to make every single month.
Mhm.
So try to unify it as best you can. Um, Try to find out what they'll cost in terms of total repayment. Um, don't get distracted by interest rates. That's another one as well, because some people do focus on that. And bottom line is get a cash flow plan.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
And this one says that we find on average of about 3,100 every month. I'd say up to about that. Like that's kind of like the range. But just as a reminder, sometimes we find nothing because the financial situation is that dire. So I don't want anyone thinking that, hey, if they work with us, automatically we're going to find them, $3,100 in freed up cash. That's not always the case. But the one way to find out is to start the process.
Yep.
And what we like to do is, if you provide us with your information, your financial information, we could determine if we can help you or not. And if we feel that we can help you, then you would be paying for our services. If we feel there is no way of helping you, then there's no cost to you to find out if we even are able to help you. So I just want to throw that out there. The other piece too, though, is there's the educational component. So there's 12 modules that we do offer to our clients. So if you do want to have access to those 12 modules, then you would also be paying for those services in order to have access to the educational piece as well.
Yeah. And it's really about, again, going back to understanding behaviors, creating new habits. And that's what the education piece is about, which people, if you haven't been to school lately, I know the education system has said they've gone into financial literacy, but who's to say how strong those are, and how, taking charge of your own financial future is important. So,
yeah, I think the government needs to maybe take some of those courses for themselves. But that's again another episode, right? So, what are the next steps, Ryan?
Well, the next step,
if anyone is interested,
is what are the most important goals you want to achieve over the next 6 to 12 months? So again, really reflecting upon yourself. Ask your family members too, and it's always good to start with your kids at a younger age. We take that for granted. My son's 8, going on 9, and I ask these questions of him. What does he want to achieve over the next six to 12 months for, a vacation or something he wants to purchase? Second is, what's stopping you from achieving that goal?
Yeah.
A hard question to ask yourself. And as you're driving to and from work with the $1.65 gas, what's stopping you from achieving your goal besides gas prices? So,
yeah.
And then finally, really just book a short consultation with us to find out if your behavioral cash flow planning is right for you. As Jim said, there's a quiz, a money mindset quiz that you can take to understand. I always say it's kind of like the love language quiz, only on the financial side, and find out what your mindset is around money, and find out what your partner's is and your other family members. That way you understand where each other is coming from when it comes to their money mindset. So,
yeah. So if anyone would like to find out how to get a hold of us to start the process, there's many different ways. So one of the ways is just put a comment in the YouTube video that you'd like to be contacted. We'll reach out to you, or in the podcast section, just leave a comment there as well. Also, you can find us at tvhcashflow.ca. So that's tvhcashflow.ca. Or you can also email us at cashflowsolutions@tvhgroup.ca. And in that instance, cash flow is CACHEFLO solutions@tvhgroup.ca. And then finally, you can just use the good old-fashioned phone, 647-727-4668. So Ryan, that's another one in the books. This one was a fun topic to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be back the next couple of weeks with another episode as well. So for any of you who've enjoyed the our topic today, we ask you to subscribe, to share, to reach out to us, provide any comments. We'd love your feedback. If there's any topics you'd love for us to kind of address, we would love to hear from you as well. We'd love to address those. So Ryan, until the next time.
Take care.
Why is it me? Why am I a guy? I still